The NCIS universe just got a little bit bigger. Is it worth the watch? Let's find out.
Temporal causality. We think we're stuck in a specific fragment in time, but we've been repeating that same fragment over and over.
I just want a second look.
There's something about this one, isn't there? It's familiar somehow.
Romeo is correct. Events do appear to be repeating themselves.
Let me quote Leviticus 10.
We saw this.
Hello, welcome to You've Seen It Before, TV Reviews Connection of Mind. NCIS Tony and Ziva is the latest installment in the NCIS universe. It once again features Michael Weatherly as Tony DiNozzo and Cody DiPablo as Ziva David. And we find Ziva and Tony in their post-NCIS lives, where Tony is the head of his own security firm, and Ziva is still working through her PTSD, all while Ziva and Tony are co-parenting their daughter Tali, when a rival security firm pretty much blows up their reputation. It is up to Ziva and Tony to clear their names and save their daughter from this new scourge. Now, this video will contain spoiler talk on NCIS Tony and Ziva. I'll be doing my spoiler-free thoughts first and foremost, though, but just so you know, there will be some spoilers later on in this review. So, first things first, let's get into the spoiler-free talk on Tony and Ziva. Is this worth your time? Is this a good installment in the NCIS-verse? I would say, if you're like me, and you've been watching NCIS, the main NCIS rather, for, pretty much the entire run, or at the very least from season 3 onward, because that's when Ziva jumped onto the scene, then this is much must-see TV for you, because this is the first time we've seen Tony and Ziva on screen together since the season 11, which was back in 2013. So we're talking 12 years ago now. Yes, we've seen Michael Weatherly pop up in a cameo here or there. We've seen Cody Pablo as Ziva show up in another season, I believe season 15 or 16. But we haven't seen these two together since 2013. So we're talking 12 years since we've last seen these two on screen. And I gotta say, it's fun to see them back together and the banter between them. I know that Michael Weatherly and Cody DiPablo do a NCIS retrospective podcast together. And I've listened to a couple of their episodes, and it's fine, but to see these two on screen together in character, the camaraderie, the banter is perfect as far as I'm concerned. They have not, they look older, but it feels like they've been doing this unbroken since that time. That's how good these two are, and I also give extra special props to Maximilian Ozinski, who plays Boris, who is a, I believe, Hungarian hacker who they team up with during this, as well as James Darcy as Henry, who is a member of a team member of Interpol, who is a friend of Tony on this, and I especially like James Darcy because I like him from Agent Carter, who when he played Jarvis in that, so it's fun to see him on that. So it's great to see these characters together, and it's great to see continuations of their stories, because while NCIS proper sowed the seeds of they're gonna get back together, it's gonna be have a happily ever after. Well, let's see what happily ever after looks like on their side of things, and it's not quite happily ever after. But it's fun to watch these characters play off these people play off each other, and see these characters develop for one another. It's nice to see how, last we saw Tali, she was probably, 3 years old, I think, season 14, 15 or whatever of NCIS. And now we see her, she's, pretty much a teenager at this point. And we see, what does it look like to have, Tony and Ziva as your parents? How, growing up on there? That's a fun aspect to have on this. And I like the supporting cast on this as well. What I think this series falls apart, however, is in the weekly format. Surprisingly enough, if you've watched me on this channel, I've extolled the virtues of the weekly drop form, the episodic format of series such as Star Trek Strange New Worlds. However, with the context of Tony and Ziva, where it's supposed to be a limited series, I don't believe they're renewed it for season 2. It's supposed to be a 10-episode run. Because they released the first 3 episodes, and then they did weekly after that, I think they made a little bit of a mistake there. And I think this may have benefited from something like what Disney's Andor did for season 2, where they did 3-episode chunks. And they could have done something like that for this series, because I'm not entirely certain that there's enough going on in this series to warrant a episode-by-episode weekly drop. Because often when I was watching this, because I was watching this fairly evenly week to week, there was a couple episodes I missed, and then I had to do 2 at a time. But overall, I would say week to week, I can't say there's enough going on per episode that's worth a episode-by-episode drop. And it feels like this series may have fallen into the trap of, all right, so we got 10 episodes. We got this much story to go. We're going to chop this up a little bit at a time. And we're not entirely certain how much story there is per episode, but just go with it. Just go with it. I'm not sure if that really worked so much on this one. I feel like episode per episode, I don't know if there was enough to sustain me week to week. And especially in the early episodes where this episode, the series starts with a flash, we got the in media res of the, all right, so Ziva's walking down the aisle, and then, oh, that's not Tony, what's going on? Well, let's go back, let's see what's going on here. And then it's like 3 weeks earlier, it's like, all right, that's fine. But then you got that flashback, and then flashbacks to like 2020 when Tony and Tali reunite with Ziva, and then you've got back to 2020, back to 2025, and then back to a little bit later in 2025 with the wedding, and then those first 4 episodes are flash forward, flash back, flash forward, flash back, and that got a little annoying to me. I'm not sure it worked quite as well as it could have, but at the same time, I would say the banter between Tony and Ziva, the camaraderie between the quote-unquote main cast, mainly Tony and Ziva, with the supporting cast, namely Boris and the other supporting cast, as well as Tali, that works just well enough. It's fun to see these characters interact with one another in this environment, that I like them as they are in their own environment. I appreciated the little references to other NCIS things, like, Tony saying, oh man, I wish, it's like I'm asking for McGee to, what do we got? And it's like, those kind of cameos are fine. And I think that this works well enough where, there's no, NCIS proper cameos, and I think this works to its advantage that it doesn't need them. But like I said, that episode by episode drop doesn't necessarily work as well as it could. So if I was going to give NCIS Tony and Ziva a letter grade, I would say this is a solid B. And if I was going to rate this on the scale of unoriginality, I would say this weighs in at a less than original, where you've seen it before, but it could be worse. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts on NCIS Tony and Ziva. Now let's get into some spoiler talk as certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. So, like I always say with my season or series reviews, I don't like to go episode by episode on these because there are other channels that do a much better job with that. I try to do just general thoughts on these. And with Tony and Ziva, there's a couple things that come to mind with this, and there's these, the spy tropes. You got these, spies / espionage tropes where, you got your spy that's going dark because, everyone's hunting with them because they're being framed for something they didn't do. There's a lot of movies that go in for that, but for me, this series kind of made me think of both Taken and Taken 2. Not in the extreme case of those movies, but you have the spy who has his daughter kidnapped, and he has to find her. But at a certain point, after that, then the daughter has to go rescue the parents, even though Talia doesn't play quite as big a role in rescuing her parents as Liam Neeson's daughter does in Taken 2. There's a certain comparison to be made with Tony and Ziva and those two movies. And finally, just a general sense, you've got the Maleficent AI program, specifically 9.4 in Tony and Ziva, which can be used for both good and bad and be manipulated to certain ways and taint the good name of our main characters. Made me think of Eagle Eye, which is a film from 2007, 2008, I believe, with Shia LaBeouf, where the rogue AI then taints his good name, and he has to fight to clear his name from that front. There's other movies that do that, but that's just the one that came to my mind. Like I said, those are my main spoiler thoughts on the series. What did you think of Tony and Ziva? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What my analysis? Do you agree? Disagree? Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be for Predator Badlands, which comes out November 7th, I believe. And if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching, but just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.